They say death is the ultimate fear, but few ever speak of the terror that comes with true freedom. Freedom isn't light and easy. It's raw. It strips you. It demands you stand alone, without crutches, without masks, without someone else to blame. Most people don't want that. They want safety wrapped in the illusion of purpose. They'd rather stay in comfortable cages than breathe the unknown air of liberation. The real secret? The mind is more afraid of its own untapped power than it is of dying. Because power means responsibility, and responsibility demands change. You'll have to let go of everything: your beliefs, your roles, your name. Everything you've used to define yourself will begin to dissolve. What's left when all that disappears? That silence, that space, it terrifies. So we cling to rules, we kneel to systems, we obey, not because we are weak, but because freedom asks everything of us. And awakening? It begins where excuses end. But here's the twist. The moment you stop running from freedom, the fear shifts. It becomes a compass. It points to the exact walls you've built to feel safe. Every fear of judgment, every fear of being too much or not enough, it all maps out the prison of your mind. And when you see it clearly, you realize the cage was never locked. You were always holding the key. No one is stopping you from stepping out but you. But that step feels like death to the ego. It threatens your comfort, your control, your story. That's why awakening is rarely glamorous. It's messy. It's lonely. It's facing everything you've avoided. But on the other side, there's something no cage can offer. Truth. Real, unfiltered truth. And with it comes a quiet kind of power. Not the power to control others, but the power to finally be yourself, fully, without apology. Most people never make it past that moment. They feel the pull toward freedom, but freeze. Why? Because freedom means responsibility. It means owning your choices, your beliefs, your failures. It's easier to blame society, your past, your parents, than to say, "This is mine. I created this." And yet, until you do, nothing really changes. The illusion of control keeps you in place, while real power waits on the other side. This is the paradox. We cling to chains because they're familiar, not because they're true. But if you can pause, just long enough to feel the fear without reacting, you'll notice something. The fear isn't permanent. It moves. And behind it, there's space. Space to choose again. That's the moment the mind loses its grip and the soul begins to rise. That's the moment you start to remember who you are, not who you were taught to be. You didn't find this by chance. The moment you felt something shift, that was the beginning. Subscribe now, not just to a channel, but to the truth you've been avoiding. What keeps us afraid of freedom is the subtle voice that says, "You're not ready." It whispers doubts, amplifies shame, and reminds you of every past failure. But that voice is not truth. It's programming. A survival mechanism wired into us by systems that benefit from our smallness. True freedom demands responsibility. It means no longer blaming the world, the past, or others. It means realizing you were never really trapped, only taught to believe you were. But shedding that belief feels like death to the ego. That's why freedom is terrifying. It means you are the creator, not the victim. And being the creator means confronting your fears, owning your desires, and walking a path that no one can walk for you. That's power. That's awakening. And it begins the moment you choose to question the voice that keeps you tame. You've been taught that freedom comes after obedience, that once you follow the rules, meet expectations, prove your worth, then maybe you'll earn it. But that's the lie. Freedom is not granted, it's reclaimed, and it rarely feels peaceful at first, because when you start living from your own truth, you disrupt the scripts others wrote for you. You shake their illusion of control. You become unpredictable, and nothing threatens a system more than someone who doesn't ask for permission. The fear you feel isn't a sign to stop. It's a sign that you're crossing the threshold. The walls weren't real. They were made of fear, guilt, and the need to be accepted. But you were never meant to fit. You were meant to expand, to stretch beyond the labels, beyond the smallness. The truth is, real freedom doesn't make you comfortable. It makes you real. And in that rawness, you finally remember what it feels like to be alive. The mind conditioned by fear will always cling to the known. It would rather stay trapped in a prison it understands than risk freedom it can't control. That's why true liberation isn't about escaping something out there. It's about dissolving the cage within. You don't fight the old system by shouting at it. You stop feeding it. You stop believing it. When you stop seeking validation from broken sources, they lose power over you. At first, this silence feels like isolation, but eventually, it becomes spacious. You start to hear your own voice again, not the one shaped by fear, but the one buried beneath it. That's where your power has been hiding, in the quiet knowing that you were never broken, never wrong, never too much, just misdirected. Reclaiming that truth doesn't happen in one moment. It happens every day you choose yourself over the scripts they handed you. Every time you stop apologizing for existing. That's the revolution. Not loud, but real. The closer you get to your inner freedom, the louder the world becomes. Not because it has more power, but because it senses it's losing its grip on you. Distraction will come disguised as urgency. Old fears will wear new faces. People you love might pull you back, not out of malice, but because your growth threatens their comfort. This is the edge where many turn back. But if you pause, if you stay, you'll notice something beneath the noise. Peace. Not the peace that comes from having everything under control, but the kind that doesn't need control at all. It lives in the spaces you once ran from, in stillness, in surrender. You realize you were never chasing freedom. You were running from responsibility. Because true freedom doesn't feel like escape. It feels like ownership, like standing in your truth, even if your voice shakes, like loving your life, even if no one else understands it. That's the moment you step through the veil. You don't become free by breaking the rules. You become free by realizing there were never any real ones, just inherited fears, silent contracts you never signed but lived by. True rebellion isn't loud. It's in choosing presence over panic, integrity over approval, truth over comfort. You stop living on autopilot. You start choosing, not reacting. And something shifts. You no longer chase the world's validation because your soul has already approved you. Freedom isn't granted, it's remembered. It was never taken from you. You were simply taught to forget. The moment you stop waiting for someone to unlock you and realize the key was always in your hand, you begin to live, fully, honestly. No more pretending, no more shrinking to fit others' expectations. This is the quiet revolution. No fireworks, just you, finally, showing up for yourself. Not to prove anything, but to become everything you were meant to be. You were always free. You just forgot. What if your fear of freedom is the very thing keeping you from being truly alive?